that would make you even more insurrectionary, even more angry to be living on £20 or £30 a week in those days.
Well, yeah, I think that the right to work's not a great slogan. Are you keen on the dignity of labour?
No, as Oscar Wilde said, there's nothing dignified about standing in a prevailing wind for 4 hours, sort of sweeping the shit in the gutters. He said, don't talk to me about the nobility of labour, and I have done that for 10 years. I had a job doing that, cleaning the streets. I know exactly what it means. There's nothing dignified about it at all. I mean, the right to work is really the left saying, oh, the right for the proletariat to work in daddy's factories.
Then in the sort of, after the riots in the early 80s, class war came upon the scene, both as a newspaper and a movement. What did you think of class war, the newspaper?
Well, as I was involved in it, I thought it was absolutely brilliant, right? And class war as a newspaper, Class War as a newspaper and Class War as a movement came out against a background of industrial struggle, mass riots on the streets and so on in the urban centres that we were talking about earlier on. I mean, for example, I can remember the big public service demonstrations where hundreds of thousands of workers, myself included, being a worker at that time, went on strike. Basically had these big marches in central London to try and influence government policy. Not that we really believed that we could do it, but we used to sell Class War, and I remember distinctly, and one of my best memories ever was having a copy of the Class War with the Chaz and Di and their baby and the words "another f***ing royal parasite," and like literally dozens, if not hundreds of people actually queuing up to buy it, all dressed up in their nurses' uniforms, firemen's uniforms with their local council caps on and so on. Yeah, it was a great buzz, and it was like that all the time. I'd say that Class War was a really great buzz, and I think we were like perhaps a really good representatives of the anger of the time.
I mean, one of the problems with anarchist newspapers has always been breaking out of the anarchist ghetto, so to speak. And I think Class War did show that it was possible to develop a mass circulation paper. I mean, do you think that's still a possibility these days?
I think everything's wide open. I think it is a possibility, and I think there's a possibility to progress in other medias as well. Radio, television, I don't see why we shouldn't do stuff like that. I mean, the net's a big thing, but I'm not really into the net. It seems to isolate people, but radio, television, more papers, yeah, sure.
I think people hear about Class War selling lots of newspapers and they think you just went on the street and they all sold out in half an hour, but it was hard work, wasn't it, Martin?
Well, it was hard work, but, you can keep going when people are buying hundreds. You're not standing there like someone from the socialist worker outside Sainsbury's being assaulted by little old ladies with umbrellas, not selling a single thing, dumping them in the bin afterwards and paying for it out of your own wages. No.
And then the miners' strike in 85 and the real, Thatcher's assault on the working class. Do you think there was a way the miners' strike could have been won? Yes,
but in two ways. First of all, it sounds rather sort of revisionist and so on, or whatever you want to call it, but I definitely think if the TUC had called a general strike, it would have been over in a week one way or another, and that would have been it. I think also if there was a general strike, I think the opportunities for pushing it a lot further would have been there, but perhaps that's why they didn't do it. Who knows?
Yeah, and do you think, what about the role of Class War and anarchists in the strike? Do you think there's some things we could have pushed further there, or do you think we did as much as the resources allowed?
I think we did as much as we could. Although if there'd have been urban riots like there was in 1981, for example, alongside the miners' strike, if both had run simultaneously, then I think that the government would have been in real trouble. I think that it would have probably given us probably taken us to a sort of semi-insurrectionist state for a while.
Yeah, I've always regretted that Broadwater Farm and Brixton went up 6 months after the end of the miners' strike. If they'd happened during the miners' strike, it's difficult to see how the police would have had enough manpower to police the coalfields, inner city areas.
They would have had to have employed the armed forces, and can you imagine them having soldiers on the streets? I mean, that is a surefire sign that things are not going well for the government when they've got soldiers on the streets. I mean, that would have made a real impact on people's minds.
I mean, Our brand of anarchism has often been called the sort of street insurrectionary brand of anarchism, and there's a quote from you from Class War at the time: "We must go out with a paper in one hand and a brick in the other." Do you think that insurrectionary brand of anarchism these days is still as possible it was against the sort of naked class warrior Thatcher in the 80s?
I think that's what it will come down to in the end. Let's face it. That's what it comes down to always, doesn't it? Every social movement always goes out onto the streets and so on. There's always extremely, if I dare to use the word, violent, like barricades, looting of shops, seizure of buildings. That's what it's all about. That's what anarchism's partly about. It's about revolution.
Can you sort of capture the sheer joy, enthusiasm, and adrenaline rush of being in a riot for people who've never been there? Because it's not just a political thing; it is a sort of buzz and rush.
Oh, it most certainly is, but I don't want to make it sound like a really interesting sexual experience. Although I suppose it could be compared to the best sex you've ever had, but we're not all in. Not everybody's into brawling and fighting and throwing petrol bombs and raising barricades and so on.
Do you think the present economic crisis is presenting opportunities to anarchists which maybe didn't exist 4 or 5 weeks ago in the way things are going?
Yes, I see it over a longer period of time, perhaps a year, perhaps 2 years. The system can stabilise itself. There's no reason why it can't, but it does look to be in a bit of trouble. I mean, so far it's people losing their jobs in banks and so on, and subsidiary industries, personal industries as well. People that walk their dogs, their nannies and so on. All these people are going to lose their jobs as well. But I think it would require all the banks to collapse, the entire stock market to collapse. It's being shored up quite ably, I think, at the moment. But it could break loose. It could, like a dam, it could just break and just go. It has done before. There's no reason why it couldn't now.
Of course, other fish swim in this pool of discontent, like the BNP and so on. How do you view the sort of the slow but sure rise of the BNP of late?
With alarm. I think the BNP basically do pick up their support from the white working class. They're not picking up their support from the middle class. If the middle class started to support them, as the middle class historically have supported fascism, like in Hitler's Germany, for example, I think we'd be in real trouble. What pisses me off, what I don't like so much, is the fact that the very people that the BNP are attracting, alienated white working class people, are the sort of people that should be interested in anarchism, interested in insurrection. It's only because the BNP are the only alternative in a lot of places that people flock to the BNP. If there were better anarchist alternatives, I'm absolutely sure that a lot of people would come over to us instead. But we're small, we're elitist even, very ghetto orientated. We don't want to go out on the streets. We don't want to be a mass movement. It's almost like some sort of heresy. But that's what we should be aiming for, and I think that is the best way to fight the BNP. Although, of course, I am in favour of physically opposing the BNP, but you've got to remember they don't actually march out on the streets anymore, so it makes them difficult to combat.
I think some of the left have been a bit slow on the uptake of that the BNP has totally changed. They're not out with their sort of street goon squads anymore, so opposing them politically is more difficult maybe than it was.
Yes, but that's opposing them politically is to build up a viable, non-authoritarian, non-hierarchical, street-fighting, anarchist class war type scenario. That's what I oppose the BNP with. I wouldn't oppose the BNP with liberalism or vote for the Liberal Democrat candidate in the council election, keep out the BNP. That's not the sort of politics I'm in.
Which brings us on to the state of the modern anarchist movement. In the last sort of 10 years or so, anarchism seems to be defined as much more of a lifestyle option of a dog on a string, of a vegan, of what clothes you wear, what fashion you like, what music you listen to. What's your take on the sort of, the state of the anarchist movement at the moment in England?
No, I think it's pretty dire, but it has been pretty dire for quite some time, even when I was like a youth of 16, 17. I find that the anarchists here, not really what I would call anarchists, a lot of them, I find them to be extreme liberals, left communists, pacifists, not anarchists. I think that's a big thing as well. A lot of what we think is the anarchist movement is something else, except it's using anarchism as a label of convenience.